Hi, I've been gluing up these shelves for my wall unit, and to be honest, I made these out of some reclaimed materials, some floorboards and other bits and pieces of pine, and none of them were out of wind. All of them were a bit cupped as well. So although I jointed the edges nicely and got pretty much flat boards out of them, they still do have a little bit of wind and a little bit of cup in them. So I'm going to show you how I get rid of that. Now when I glued these up, I assembled the boards in a way such that the twist from one was trying to take out the twist from the other, and when I clamped them I was holding them as flat as possible. So they're in stress together, and that's fine, they can stay in stress for the rest of their lives, but they're still not perfectly flat and out of twist, so I just have to take a little bit out of each of the boards. You'll also notice this one here, it's reclaimed lumber, so I've got a hole in it here and a couple of other bits of damage on there. I'll take care of the hole at another stage. Now if I hold this board up to the light with a straight edge on it, you should be able to see that there's light coming through. And there's a little bit of a crown on the other side. We'll get rid of some of that, but we don't need to get rid of all of that. I'll explain how I've got the bench set up. I've got a bench dog and I've got a clamp at the back there, and let me show you what that does. So if I was planing this board against the single bench stop, planing on this side is absolutely fine and it will stay in line, won't be a problem. But if I start planing over this side, the whole thing wants to twist. By putting an F clamp here, the end of it just sits up against the board, stops any of that twist, and it's locked in nice and firm. Now because the board's in a bit of twist, it rocks on these corners, opposite corners. So what I'm using is some plastic cards just to take that wobble out, and you can put cards along the edges, just gives that little bit extra support so the board isn't going to bow under the weight of the plane. I'm going to be using my winding sticks to take the wind out. If you haven't seen these before, then I'll show you what I do with them. I do actually make these as well and sell them on my website if you're interested. What they do is give a good indication of how much wind is in a board, so how much out of flat it is in this direction. Now it's important that when they're used that they sit on the outside edges of the board. So you can see at the moment it's twisting in the middle, so I'm high in the middle here, so we need to remove that before we can really get a good judge of twist in the whole board. And it's the same at the other end. So first of all I'll just take a few shavings through the middle of the board and leave the edges as they are. You might actually be able to see a few little planer marks in the middle here where it went through the thickness planer before I started. They will get taken away when I do a final smoothing on the board. So with the winding sticks now twisting on the outside edges, we can check for wind. So if the board's in wind, you'll see one dark marker will disappear before the other, and the other way round, like so. What we're aiming for is as we sight down them, for both those markers to disappear at the same time. That's very difficult to show on the camera, but I'm seeing that this marker is disappearing much later than that one, meaning that this corner of the board and the opposite corner down here are higher than this one and this one over here. That means I need to remove material from this area and from this area until I bring them so that they're no longer in wind. I'm going to be using some calipers when I do that, because I don't want to take more material off this corner than I do off this corner, because I want to maintain the maximum thickness of the board as I go along. Now it's going to be very tedious lifting the board up to put it between the calipers every time, so I'm going to use the depth measuring device here and that's not going to be as accurate to take depth measurements, but it'll get me very close, and when I get towards out of twist I can use the throat and the mouth of the calipers to do a more accurate reading. So material off here, material off here, leave these corners and continue to take material through the middle so that I don't end up with a bump across. Now that means I'm going to be planing from within this end on this edge all the way through and out the end of that high corner, and on the edge towards me I'm going to be starting from before the corner, across the high corner most of the way, but not to the very end of this edge. So that's a low corner, that's a low corner, and we never want to take material off there when we start out. Now I should be checking regularly to see that we don't get a lump across the board, but also to check that our wind is slightly reducing. And it is. We're making some progress. So I'm going to go and sharpen my iron because that felt a little bit dull to me. And I'll continue to do that until I've got these corners and these corners all in the same plane. A little bit thicker here, so I'll take the rest of the shavings off that corner just to bring it out of wind. And that's it, that's spot on. So I have just got a little tiny bit of planer marks there. We will be smoothing it later when I fill the hole, so I'm quite happy with that. That's virtually the only area that needs much attention at all. A little bit of tear out around the knots, but really nothing to talk about. Let's flip it over to the other side. Now sits flat on the bench, almost, because it's got a slight belly on the other side, slight dip on this side, so it moves just a little bit. That's perfect. So double check the thicknesses, because we might have one end that's thinner than the other. So this end here, very slightly thinner than this end. So take a few stop shavings from that end up to about here, just to correct that, and then we can smooth it. Perfect. Onto the smoother. Very little work to do on here at all because I've just sharpened the foreplane. It's left it lovely and smooth. It's even worked quite nicely around the knots. So that's flattened the board, that's thicknessed it. We have got that about 3/4 thou hump on one side, so we make sure when we fit it as a shelf we put that side to the top, and that's going to serve us very well. Next time I'll fix these holes. Cheerio.